Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question. In fact, Mr. Speaker said the question is factually wrong, but I think the intention, and I'll explain that why. I'll explain that why, but I think the intention of the question.
Order.
The intention of the question.
You've raised the question with the learned professor here, so having a go at the way the question was couched, and he's trying to answer that. Let's listen to the answer.
We allowed the question, Mr. Speaker, because the intention of the question is relevant. So I will correct the factual side of it as well as answer the question in terms of the intent. But before I do that, Honourable Speaker, let me just set this in the context. Tariff protection has always been an important economic policy tool for countries to protect and support local industries, where it's imperative. And, in the 70s, in the 80s, we started by that. We had huge protection for rice industry. We had protection for manufacturing. Some of it is still continuing. And these were all done in line with the fair market practices that eventually encourage competition and consumer options, which could lead to price reduction as well. And the idea of tariff protection, in economics, we call it infant industry argument, where tariff protection is given to allow industries to grow up, to compete, and then, progressively you reduce the tariff. Historically, Mr. Speaker, Fiji has had substantial protection for numerous local business industries, and we started with tariff reforms, and it actually started under the leadership of the Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Sitiveni Rambuka, in the 1990s. And it was designed to promote, trade liberalization. And in some sense, this outward-looking strategy for economic growth, paid dividend. So despite the initial reforms, certain protections persisted and were supported by all governments in Fiji, and continued over a period of time. Some, however, have been gradually phased out, and the subsequent phased out involved assessing and lowering of fiscal duties. And the most common form of protection, Mr. Speaker, is tariff protection, import duties, a tax on imports. So, of course, the old strategy again was quota, but most countries don't go towards quota anymore. It's basically tariff protection. The global, trading environment is one designed to gradually reduce tariff. So, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the poultry industry, this is one of the most heavily protected industries in Fiji. Good news, as a result of that we are almost self-sufficient. However, self-sufficiency and the support for local industry, Mr. Speaker, must be carefully balanced with the cost to our people. Because what happens is sometimes when the tariff rate is very high, even if the item is imported, the cost to the consumers can be very, very high. And we need to ensure that industries that get tariff protection are at the same time able to reduce prices, improve quality, and offer greater choice to consumers. So in the budget, Mr. Speaker, we recognize and we reduce the import excise duty on chicken portions from 10 to 0%, not 15 to 0. So it was the import excise duty on chicken portions only, not whole chicken, from 10 to 0% and not from 15 to 0% as the question puts out. So that's why I said factually incorrect. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, despite the reduction from 10 to 0 in the import excise duty, the duty of 32% still remains. So even if somebody who is importing chicken portions today, that importer still pays 32% instead of the original 42%. So a total tariff protection of 42% is still applicable for anything which includes whole chicken other than the chicken portion. Because what we found out, Mr. Speaker, say when we were doing the budget, even with the 42% duty, some of the importers of chicken portions, chicken wings, chicken drumstick, were still able to sell in the local market at a lower price than our local producers. And that, to me, was in some sense unethical. So we haven't completely, and we made sure, because we realized that the whole chicken still has a duty of 42%. The other thing that we have in this country, Mr. Speaker, is that we are only at the moment importing chicken from New Zealand. You know, if you import chicken from Indonesia, for example, and Indonesia has quality chicken. Japan imports, from the figures that I saw, about 40% of chicken from Indonesia. And if we allow import of chicken from Indonesia, we probably end up landing the chicken here with 42% duty and still selling those chicken at a much lower price than what our local producers sell. So what we did in the budget, we reduced the duty and we extended it to lamb, beef, prawns, ducks, corned meat, tin fish, to facilitate price reductions for domestic products. And what we found, Mr. Speaker, that the prices of some of those items actually came down. So while we reduced the duty on chicken portions, we have still maintained a high level of protection for the whole chicken, which is about 42%, 32% fiscal duty, plus the 10% import exercise. And this is, again, I want to repeat, Mr. Speaker said, this is the highest level of protection. And after the budget, some of the producers played funny. I mean, we had this, and it was all designed to bring out this negativity about the budget. And suddenly, because of the budget, because of the increase in VAT from 9 to 15% on some of the items, that suddenly the price of chickens went up. And then when the government intervened, the prices were brought down. The other point that we want to make, Mr. Speaker, is the local producers, between the three of them, they employ 2,400 people. And we know that even with the reduction in duty for chicken portions, their profitability has not been affected. Because the sign that we are getting, Honorable DPM Kamgida the other day, officiated at the new investment made by Crest, another 22 million. And all the producers that we had discussion are actually, in the end, satisfied with what the government had done. So I do not see, Mr. Speaker, any significant impact on the local production as far as the investment, as far as what the three producers are getting. But the point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, again, is, as I said, that the poultry industry is still one of the most heavily protected industry, and government is paying for it. So when we put those very high duty, the cost, even if there was zero VAT, If you raise the duty, it's a tax on the consumers. The people who import, Mr. Speaker, say they don't pay for those taxes. All they do is simply pass it on to the consumers. So if somebody imports whole chicken, say from New Zealand, they pay 42% duty, and if they sell it in the market, they're not the ones who are going to subsidize. They simply add that 42% onto the cost and the consumers. So the signal that we provided in the budget, Mr. Speaker, was to say to the local producers, look at your pricing, look at your efficiency. Don't just concentrate on making exorbitant profit at the cost of the prices to the consumers. And in terms of jobs, 2,400, yes, we appreciate that. 2,400 families or less than that. But the important thing is that we have 800,000 people in the country. So that's the message that we wanted to give to the producers as a result of what we did. And it brought down the prices of chicken portions, wings, and people appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.